everybody, welcome back to the 3D Printing Corner. So I've been waiting to do a review of the Odin MK1M, and I've been having trouble getting to it. I've run a lot of prints on this machine now, and it's a good machine. But so I decided I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do it as a live one. Can't sleep, so figure I might as well go ahead and get it done. So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at the printer itself first. So here is the printer. Everything on it so far is stock as it came, except for this build surface. It originally came with a piece of PEI. I'm not a big fan of PEI myself, and I really in particular did not like that PEI. So I went ahead and replaced that. Everybody knows that's a really simple thing to do. It's just a matter of, because this does have auto leveling, I had to adjust the offset a little bit because the print surface here, which is actually very similar to my Maker Select's print surface, it's a build tack like surface. It's a little thicker than PEI. But other than that, that's the only thing that's been changed on it. So let's go ahead and we will walk through issues I had. So, the very first issue I ran into when I got the machine, as you can see, it's got a probe for auto leveling. This probe was dead when I got it. I contacted Steve at Hooklet, and he got me out a new one in the mail really quickly, and installed it, got the offset set, and everything was great. So that worked fine. The next issue that I ran into was in the firmware they did not reverse this gear. So basically when you fed filament through to feed it to the extruder, instead of feeding it through, it was pulling it out. So I did have to make a change there. I could have changed it in the firmware. I chose to just invert it on the board. So flipped all the wires around on the board. The issues that I'm seeing with this printer, so there was one other issue, but we'll get to that here in a minute. The main issue that I see with this printer, and I've communicated with the folks at Hooklet, and they've actually taken that to heart and they're fixing, is wire management. The wire management on this thing is terrible. It was really hard to wire everything into this box and get everything on the board. And like I said, there were parts that it just didn't work with the probe. But, you know, it wasn't difficult for me. I've been tinkering with electronics my whole life. But for somebody that is not as familiar with electronics, they're going to have some issues with that. So, okay. What they're going to do is they're actually switching over to basically a single plug connection, so that all of the wires, all of these wires here, rather than have to actually plug them onto the board, you're just going to actually connect them up and everything will be ready to go. The assembly on this, I was going to do an assembly build for this printer, but there was absolutely zero issues with assembly. I made one mistake in that I mounted this backwards. That was the only issue I had. And that was my own issue. I wasn't paying attention, so I chose not to do one. One of the concerns that I've heard some folks raise is there's a lot of 3D parts, 3D printed parts here. So we've got this here. These pieces over here are 3D printed. The top corners, the base here, all of that is 3D printed. These are, take a look at these. These are beautifully 3D printed parts. They're done very solid. I'm not positive. I believe they're done in PETG. But I would have to check to make sure with that with the folks at Hooklet. But nevertheless, the parts themselves are absolutely beautiful. So I have no problem with the fact there's 3D printed parts. I do like, on the model price here, everything is metal. But if you notice, I have to go through and add all these parts for stability. This is actually, if you look, there's a little bit of wobble there, but hardly, any different than my model price after it's been all braced. I may come up with some kind of bracing system for this one that is actually similar to this that could actually be put on here. But as of right now, it's printing okay, so I'm not real worried about it. So, okay, let's start with what I don't like. We already talked about the wiring. I'm not a fan of that, but they're fixing it. The other thing I don't like is this. You notice this is just a loose power supply. I think they would be benefited to figure out a way to incorporate that power supply onto the body of the printer, similar to a way Prusa has theirs done. Just something just to get it out of the way, whether they mount it, over here on the back of the rail somehow, or something, just to make it a single unit. I assembled this upstairs, and then I brought it down to the corner down here, and just having those two pieces, it was kind of a pain. The other issue I had with that power supply is this connector right here. So you can kind of see, if I can orient it correctly here, see that burning? So this connector was not, it's really hard to focus here, sorry. The wires were not correctly seated in this connector, and it was getting incredibly hot, which was then causing my heat bed to basically take far too long to heat up, which then was causing me to get errors when I would try and heat my bed up because it would stay at the same temperature for too long while it was trying to heat. So that was a problem. But I did contact Steve again, and again, I want to reiterate the fact this is a pre-production machine. This is not what is going to be shipping necessarily. This is kind of their first go at it. So these little issues, these aren't big deals. Excuse me. So what I did to fix that, he actually had sent me a new connector that's a better connector. But all I did was I actually just properly spliced the wires. And so that there's just no connector there at all. So it does run Marlin firmware. So there's nothing out of the ordinary there. I mean, when I start it up here, you can see, I mean, it's got just your standard Marlin, 0.1.x. I think this one's, I don't remember what the version is on this one for sure. I know I had to upload a new firmware version. But it works just like you would expect normal Marlin to work. Things that I like on this printer. I love the fact that it is all metal aluminum extrusions. I do like that it is got auto leveling. That's nice. The Bowden setup. So their original Odin MK1 was a direct drive extruder. The reason that they switched to a Bowden setup was they would like to be able to do a multi-material similar to how the Prusa the Prusa Mark IIs and the Mark III are doing it, where you basically line up multiple Bowdens here and you have a 2-into-1, a 4-into-1, whatever you want to do down here that can be basically controlled, and you would just set up your, your wipe tower and work like that. So I love that they switched to that Bowden system simply for that reason. Is I am looking forward to when this gets their multi-material, which I'm told is going to be sometime after the first of the year. This one is not available on their website yet. It is coming soon. Other things I like. So I told you I didn't like the fact that the power supply is loose. What I do love is this. They have put a fuse switch on and a regular standard, this is just a basic computer plug, and they have covered everything that is mains power. I do not like printers that have direct access right to the mains power, so when you go to flip a switch on, you're practically going to electrocute yourself on 120 volts. So we don't want to do that. The other thing I like is the particular end stops that they're using. So rather than your typical switches, so if we look over here, see if we can see one. It's kind of hard to see, but I had, well, so it's hard to see, but back here, you can just kind of make it out. There's the normal click switches for your end stops, and those can wear out pretty easily. What's nice on these is if you look at it, this is actually a printed part going over to here attached to this sensor. So if I push this over, as soon as that connects and it breaks that beam, it's at the end. So there's really no little mechanical bits that can be broken. You notice the Y-axis works exactly the same way. Obviously there is no Z-axis end stop because it's auto level. So what that means is it's actually using the probe as its Z-axis end stop. Now, I've been having a ton of fun with this printer, so let's go ahead and we'll go up here. So some of you have probably seen this before. This is the shelf of all of the different test prints and tools and you name it, it's here. But let's go ahead and take a look here on the floor here. That's that's wood filament there, but that is actually a Start printer. It's a $99 printer that is going to be assembled here really soon for you guys. But let's go ahead and take a look at everything that was printed on that printer. So the first successful print off of that printer was this Marvin. And you can see he's not great. He actually has some first layer issues. I told you I didn't like that PEI that was on there. It was bubbly, which is one of the reasons I chose to go ahead and remove it. But you can see he's a pretty good looking Marvin. So that is done in inland PLA. The sample they get view is inland. And it's works just like your normal inland PLA. The next thing that came off that actually was functional and worked was this wiggly fish here. But you can see he's not the greatest print in the world, but he's not bad. This was pre-sliced on their SD card. We did do a benchy that pretty seriously failed. Again, this was pre-sliced on the SD card, so I didn't really think a whole lot about that. So then I went ahead and started slicing my own. So I sliced this Marvin, and you can see he's just a lot crisper. This is done in Digistruct PLA. Those of you that follow the channel know that's one of my favorites. And he looks good. So then I start to torture it here. So the first thing we've got here is Rocktopus. Everybody's familiar with this print. You can see it's a little hairy. But I think that's something to do with the settings that he has created for his Cura profile. I've been playing with tweaking them and actually getting rid of some of that hair. So that's good. So I did that, and that turned out fine. You can see his fingers and everything. This little pug dog here, you can see just a little drooping under his chin, which this was done with no supports. It's a single shell vase mode print. So the fact there's no support under that chin, it was printing in midair. So it did a really nice job on that. We do have the tree frog here. And you can see all of his toes look really good. A little bit of banding on him, but nothing too terrible. And it can all be tweaked out, which is what I've been working on. I did do these two G-Create rockets on there as well. And you see they both turned out actually really nice. One is done with my settings. One is done with his settings. The one with my settings is slightly better, but they're pretty similar. So then I went ahead and really started to torture it, and I ran a small faceless, and you can see it had some problems with the sword here. That's a commonplace when you make it smaller for it to fail. But the back sword looks really good. A little bit of hair between his legs there you can see. But otherwise, he turned out really nice. So then I also ran a torture cube on it. You can see it's hairy. And this is all done using his profile. Again, I think I can get rid of some of this hairiness if I actually just tweak that Cura profile a little bit. So I did slice my own wiggly fish here too. And it's a lot nicer print. The bottom's nice and smooth. This was done on that PEI as well. Obviously PEI gives a little smoother surface than like Build Tack will. But, I mean, it turned out pretty good. So I wanted to try some PETG. So this is Robber X, ran on PETG. You can see his eye showed up nice. I did not turn off like running through it for model, so you do get some lines on it. But His jaw is nice and crisp, no warping. You know, he looks pretty good. This is his bottom layer. He was done on the build tack, so obviously he has a little rougher bottom layer, but that's okay. So then I wanted to run some wood stuff through it. So here are the two wood items I ran. You can see Groot here. He's hairy. Hatchbox Wood PLA does run a little stringy. He's not even hairy. He's stringy. And he's got some globs on his legs. But I mean, all in all, it turned out pretty good for being an exotic PLA through a printer that I don't really know as well. So I'm okay with him. This box turned out absolutely beautifully. And actually, I've printed a couple more of these in larger sizes for some other things. And they turn out great, no supports. That's actually kind of a fun little print. It actually opens up just like that. It's got, it prints in 3 pieces. So that's a fun one if you want to go check it out. It's just old style crate, I think is what it's called. So I wanted to test it for speed. So this particular faceless was run on my Monoprice Maker Select. This faceless here was run on the new Odin MK1M. You can actually see if you look, my Monoprice left more hair than the Odin did. This was run on some tweak settings that I did. I'm going to be sending those to Steve. But time-wise, these were started at exactly the same time. This one finished literally about 30. Then they were run identical settings. The only difference was this one, since it has auto leveling, it takes about an extra minute while it goes through the leveling process. So this one literally finished about a minute later. But otherwise, they finished the exact same time. You can see they both finished successfully. This one going bigger, the sword worked fine, and actually it produced a better print than my Monoprice, which actually produces really nice prints. So finally, I wanted to run a test that some fine detail. So this is a rook. You can see it is a little hairy. But if you look in, the stairs turned out absolutely lovely. And if we come and look real close here, you can see it just right there. The helix inside actually worked out just fine. So, what do I think about the Odin MK1M? I think it's a great printer. I think it's a good price point. It's going to be in at, I don't remember if it was $350 or $400, but it's a good price point either way. It's a lot cheaper than like a Prusa i3, and I'm thinking with a little bit of work, and if they can get their name out there, this is a fair competitor. If it gets cleaned up just a little bit to the Prusa, and they're making these things in Minnesota, which means it's going to be cheaper shipping, faster shipping if they can get production going. And you're buying something that's, I mean, those of us in the U.S., sometimes it's important to us to be able to buy something that's made in the U.S. It's a good quality printer that's made in the U.S. So, do I like it? Yes. I absolutely love this printer. This printer will be staying here. It's got its home right here, right next to that one. I'm actually trying to figure out where I'm going to put a few others right now. But, because there's going to be several other printers coming in the near future for you guys to see. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put those, but this is its new home. You can see for having the same build volume, that's one thing that I would say I don't like. It's got the exact same build volume as my Monoprice, and look at the difference in footprint. It takes up a lot more space side to side. Not a big deal. The only thing I would say is they may want to figure out a way to have some kind of spool holder. They send these fellas, which I don't mind these kind of spool holders. They're actually nice spool holders. But one of my favorite filaments is Digistruct, which comes on an odd spool. And it does not roll real well on that particular type of spool holder. I do have this fella down here that I can run it on if I need to. But they maybe want to figure out, and I may just make something that can be mounted up here. I personally don't mind, and don't usually do prints that require the details, to not be able to put a spool holder on top of the printer. But that's like my real main complaint. Everything else that I've had issues with, they've fixed. It's all nice quality components. It comes with an all-metal hot end, so you don't have to even worry about, like you would have on this one where I had to switch to an all-metal. This one, it's already there, so I don't have to worry about any of the exotics. It just worked. I mean, once I got the few little bugs worked out of it, the assembly was easy, and it just worked. And based on what I'm hearing they're changing, based on some of my review points that I've talked to them, when you get it and you assemble it, it's going to just work right out of the box. You're going to be good to go. So, what does that mean for it? Like I said, I think this is potentially a competitor. It's actually a US-made competitor for Prusa and some of the other bigger i3 companies. It's not being imported from China, which is nice. And it's made with quality parts. It's got great customer service. It's literally just a couple of guys up just outside of Minneapolis, and they're the only ones that I've had to talk to about this. So obviously as they get bigger, that may change, but as of right now, it's just them. Everything I've done actually has been the guy that started the company, which is Steve, and it's been great. So yeah, Odin MK1M, this thing is awesome. You know, the price point and everything else on it is great, and I would definitely suggest it. So I will link down below to where you can get it once this video actually gets posted. Obviously, we're live right now, but yeah, go check it out. All right, everybody. I am Jason. This is the 3D Printing Corner. If you like this kind of content, definitely subscribe. We're actually up over 150 subscribers. So we do have some more printers coming in the near future, a couple more after the first of the year, and then, like I said, we've got the start one that I've got down here on the floor that's coming soon. And yeah, so lots of stuff coming, so definitely click that subscribe button. I got some more filaments coming in. Those of you that are interested in the PX Malian filament, if you remember, I gave that a terrible review a while ago. They've actually contacted me and said, hey, we've got a new formula. They actually sent me some new ones, so we have some new ones of that coming up soon too. So yeah, lots of new things coming up. We're going to actually finally be finishing the enclosure on the monoprice as well. It's actually sitting over here with some tennis rackets on it right now, but it's going to get finished. So I'm Jason. This is the 3D Printing Corner. Click that subscribe button, ring that bell, and check back soon. All right, everybody, you have a good day.